Hi, and welcome back to the Britt Mayer Show. Today, I am joined by an assemblyman out here in California. James Gallagher has represented California's 3rd Assembly District since 2014. He is the current California Assembly Republican leader. I was really excited to bring him on just in light of everything going on in California. I feel like California for the last few years has been in the spotlight for, we've got Gavin Newsom out here. We have become just a hot spot for all of the invasion that's been going on for so long. We have the sanctuary status. There's just so much going on in California. And now California is literally on fire. So I really wanted to bring him on to discuss his position being in the legislature here in California. So James, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I know that you are so busy. We are actually preparing for Trump to come over here. He's set to be in Los Angeles tomorrow at the time of this recording.
Right. Well, it's an honor to be with you, Britt. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, we've been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons here in California, unfortunately. And a lot of that is due to our leadership and our governor. Yeah, it's exciting, though. I mean, President Trump is coming out. We're hearing tomorrow. And reviewing the wildfires, and I was actually back for inauguration, and we're in a new morning again in America, and I think there's going to be some great changes that are happening. They're going to move our country and California in the right direction.
Yeah, me too. I know we were just talking in the green room that I, for the first time, really have hope for not just our nation, but for California too. I am curious what California is looking like inside the belly of the beast. You have a much different vantage point than a lot of us do because you're seeing everything as it happens and as it plays out in Sacramento. Tell us what is going on right now, just in light of this new transition in the federal administration and our response here in California.
I think it's interesting. I mean, what has happened here in the belly of the beast over the last few years is a lot of just kowtowing to Governor Newsom, and these kind of sort of behind the scenes meetings that happen with, Democratic leaders and the governor. They come out with whatever they're going to do, and then they fast track it and vote on it. Obviously, we call it out as Republicans and try and thwart it. But we've seen a lot of subverting the process, not having, hearings and public input, and, a whole lot of bad policy that just gets pushed through. I do sense a real change in kind of tenor, and now that President Trump has been elected, I keep saying this, hey, the era of stupidity is over. And, all this crazy stuff, DEI, transgender agenda policy, has been really called out. And with the new administration coming in, I sort of sense that people see that, hey, times have changed. I hope that means that policy will change here in California. But just so you have some idea, like Prop 36 was a good example.
Mm-hmm.
They tried so hard behind the scenes to stop that from getting to the ballot so that people could not vote on crime and changing that. The governor did these, meetings behind the scenes to try and get those guys to take it off the ballot. The DAs said, no way, we're going all the way. I give them a lot of credit. We called out their shenanigans and really, I think, shamed them several times during the process. And ultimately, that got on the ballot and it passed with almost 70% of the vote. So that was a huge win for the people.
And for those that don't know, that made crime once again illegal in California, as we were seeing all those smash and grabs, and we were seeing, it was just crazy, out of control. Out here in San Diego, we had our stores just barricaded because of the smash and grabs and being able to go in. And I think it was wasn't it a 1,500 limit? You could go in and steal $1,500 worth. There was some crazy limit.
$900, I think, is what it was. You go in and steal $900 of goods, and there was literally thieves that would go in with calculators and be stealing merchandise, and they'd get away with it, until it changes policy.
It's so wild. So obviously we know that Gavin Newsom, he's not going down without a fight. He's already started posturing himself as being the anti-Trump. He's going to stonewall the MAGA mandate in California. I had an article that I pulled from Politico. Gavin Newsom and California Democrats reach a $50 million deal of our money, our taxpayer money, to Trump-proof the state. I always like to remind people that the government does not make money, it spends ours. So in this agreement, it's to shore up state and local legal defenses against the incoming, or now, Trump administration. And this started just a week ahead of the president's inauguration. And half the money will go to fending off any mass deportation plans. And then there's an additional 25 million proposed that's going to that will go to fight the federal government in court. Your thoughts on all of this? Is this really what California wants?
And, I mean, for your view, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is what California does. And this all came out like shortly after the president was elected. Gavin decided, I mean, Gavin wants to run for president in 4 years. And so he's trying to set himself up as the progressive darling that's the resistance against Trump. So not too long after the election, he announces, we're going to Trump-proof California. And everybody's going, well, what does that really mean? Well, what it means after this is all unveiled is, $50 million of your taxpayer money that's going to pay government lawyers to sue Donald Trump. It's ridiculous. I mean, he should be working with this administration to, I don't know, maybe like help stop wildfires. That might be a good thing to work on, or how to like build infrastructure, like water infrastructure that we need, dams and reservoirs. Be a good opportunity to do that. But no, Gavin wants to do this. And, it's crazy. The sanctuary policy that we have in the state that literally protects illegal immigrant criminals. And it prevents our law enforcement from cooperating with ICE to deport criminals.
Right.
That's crazy. They want to protect that policy.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because Senate Budget Chair Scott Wiener, who I have it out for, that guy is horrible. I cannot wait for him. I think he terms out finally. He's talked about wanting to be the next Pelosi. I've actually had an interaction with him in the past, and he has driven so much of the insanity that we sit under in California, and I hope there is no ladder for him to climb, because Scott Wiener is one of the absolute worst when it comes to all politicians in the nation. But he stated that this agreement cements California's readiness to serve as a bulwark against Trump's extremist agenda. So you have this guy who is an extreme radical saying that we're going to use your taxpayer money to defend against Trump's extreme agenda, which includes those deportations you were talking about. It is wild, because we know that Tom Homan has talked about coming in and getting rid of the worst who have come in here illegally. And now you have this posturing in California saying, no, we're actually going to use all of the taxpayer money, which is so incredibly high in California, to prevent that. We want those criminals to stay here. Right.
I mean, and, Senator Wiener has come up with some of the craziest ideas that you've probably heard of in California. Yes. He's usually the author of them. And here's just another one, right? He is at the center of as the budget chair in the Senate, trying to pass this legislation to, bring on more government lawyers to sue, and trying to protect criminals, people who are here illegally, victimizing our citizens. It's crazy. It cannot stand. We're going to fight against it every step of the way. But the good thing is, President Trump is not playing.
Right.
And as you said, his director Homan is coming in and saying, here's what we're going to do. We are going to go after these guys, and we don't really care whether you want to participate or not. This is the federal government. We control immigration. And so I think it's silly on their part for what they're doing. But I don't think that they're going to be able to get in the way of stopping this. And in fact, we're going to continue to push for actually changing this policy, because here in California, we want to end this. That's why I say the politics of stupidity are over. Mm-hmm. It's time to get rid of sanctuary policy that protects criminals. And by the way, we've had millions of immigrants who we know. And you've highlighted this, so well in your show. People just, driving up on the beach, and
yes,
millions of immigrants who've come across illegally into our country. We have no idea who they are. There's actually been no vetting of them.
Right.
And that is very scary.
Yes.
We have a lot of people in the world who want to harm us. And so like getting on top of this is like a paramount issue. Unfortunately, these leaders in California want to fight that. I can tell you there's a whole lot of us who are ready to support that effort and make sure that we do the right thing and protect our country.
Tom Homan, he's said that if you don't want to help us and you're going to stand in the way, then he has no problem pursuing legal action and throwing these people in jail. Do you think we could actually see that in California? Could we see politicians thrown into shackles over this?
I thought it was interesting that Kevin De Leon, who you might remember, he is the author of sanctuary state policy in California. He passed what I think was called SB 5 at the time. He just tweeted, the other day that Rob Bonta, our attorney general, very progressive, lefty, basically telling Rob Bonta, anybody who violates sanctuary state policy should be prosecuted and enforced against. And he said, this is totally constitutional. We vetted it. I mean, and if you know this guy, like he's not very smart. He's definitely no constitutional lawyer. And I just think it's funny, like he's saying that, and then we have Director Homan saying, no, actually, we are the authority, the federal government, and immigration is fully within our jurisdiction. And guess what? You are going to follow along with federal law, or you will be prosecuted. And and look, that's just clear. It's kind of fundamental to our system of government. There is separation of powers. There's also federalism, federal and state issues, and you do have to obey the law. And if you don't obey the law, then there are penalties for you not doing that. And that's prosecution and potentially even doing prison time.
And although we've seen the Biden administration thwart this, truly no one is above the law. So I keep saying, Tom Homan wants to make an example out of anyone. I welcome him to come to California, make an example out of us. I would be so happy. It would be such redemption to see a lot of these politicians made an example of. Okay, moving on real quick, because I only have you for a couple minutes. You are so busy. But I want to talk to you about the fires in California that we are seeing right now. As we're recording this, there are multiple fires in Los Angeles. I just checked my app and it's literally like a circle of flames. We've had them down in San Diego over the last week. We've had fires on and off. Some of them have been suspected or linked to arson. And I was just looking, there is a new, I think it actually just dropped an hour ago, Assemblymember Heather Hadwick and Kate Sanchez, both of them just introduced a bill to increase penalties for arsonists, citing that California's skyrocketing rates of arson must be curbed immediately. What are your thoughts on that?
It's great. The Assembly members are both members of my Republican caucus. They're new members who are going to do amazing work in the legislature, and this is much needed. The Park Fire, a very large fire that burned in my district last year, and Assemblymember Hadwick's district, it was started by an arsonist. Someone who should have never been on the street, had a record, and he literally pushed a burning car off of a cliff down into a canyon that started that fire. Just another destructive California fire. This is actually happening, and we suspect that at least one of the fires in LA, these recent fires, was potentially caused by arson as well. So this is a real issue. We need to get tough on these guys, just like with Prop 36, we got tough on thieves. We need to get tough on arsonists and say this is no longer acceptable. Harsh penalties. And look, I think also like homeless encampments in some cases have been part of, fires that have happened. We had bills last year that were trying to get at removing those encampments from sensitive areas. Maybe another one of those is looking at areas where we could have dangerous fires. And as these encampments are everywhere. It's a big problem. And look, this is personal to me. I represent Paradise that was burned by fire in 2018. We need to get on top of this. And, one of the things we need to do is really go after the arsonists, but also the dangerous fuels that have been allowed to build up here in California. Yeah.
Why don't you share that? Because I know that that's something that you have been really passionate about. You actually have a tweet pinned to your account from 2021, where you've said that Democrat politicians, if they are going to talk about climate facts, then they need to get into the forest and reduce the fuels that are causing these fires to explode. California's carbon reduction goals are obliterated year after year. 106 metric tons of carbon emitted in 2020 alone from wildfire.
Right. I mean, the basic crux of it is radical environmental policy in California has led to no more logging, very limited logging in the forested areas and very little management of our public lands. And so what that has led to is a growth of a tinderbox of dead and dying shrubs, vegetation, both in the Sierras and in the coastal mountains. And so whenever there's a spark, whether it comes from a power line or a tire blowout, lightning strike, it becomes this catastrophic fire that you can't stop. That is the number one reason that we have these fires. It's not climate change, as Gavin Newsom would have you believe. Certainly, you can try and address climate, but the best way that you do that is by actually getting out there and removing dead and dying vegetation. And then you don't have these catastrophic fires that put millions of metric tons of carbon into the atmosphere. It's a totally backward policy that they have.
And with that, how much do you think Gavin Newsom is to blame, not for the fires themselves, but for the response? We had that reservoir of water that was intended to put out anything that could create what we saw with Palisades fire, and it was dry. It's been dry for years. But how much of the progressive radical policies driven by Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are responsible for how bad this fire got out in Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, look, I think you certainly see the local mismanagement, laying off firefighters, not deploying firefighters that you could have had online during these high wind events. That's certainly a mismanagement. Why was that reservoir empty? And it's been empty for years. Those are all questions that need to be answered. But I think higher level, Gavin Newsom level, statewide, we haven't done the fuel reduction work that we need to do. Again, like a lot of these areas where these fires happen, we've allowed environmental radicals to stop projects from happening, not to remove dead and dying shrubbery and that's dangerous fuel for fires. And just last year, Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill that would have kept seasonal CAL FIRE firefighters online that could have responded to this fire. Those seasonal firefighters were laid off just before these fires broke out. That is a major problem. And, he should know the danger that we have from wildfire events that come like this one. And we need to have all hands on deck. And that was a huge mistake.
It was a huge mistake. Okay, as we wrap this up, I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of hope for what you are seeing in terms of getting California back on track, bringing common sense back. Even that, I was interested to see that LA Times owner has been very outspoken in the last couple weeks about how competent leadership matters. And this is a huge shift for the LA Times, to start kind of teasing criticism of progressive politicians. I've been very shocked. I actually just got my subscription reinstated because I'm like, okay, if we're going to go there, I'll follow along. So right. What hope do you see in just all the calamity over the last 4 years in California, with the invasion, with the smash and grabs, with the wildfires, just one thing after another, with the hypocrisy of Gavin Newsom going back to COVID era? What hope do we have in California? Should we all flee, or is there a chance that California can return to the glory days?
No, stay and fight. That's what I keep telling people. And I think the key words right now are exactly that: competence and accountability. I think people are looking for both of those things. And, Republicans in this state, I think, are really stepping up to say, this is what we would do. If you elect people who, are part of our party, we're going to be looking to bring back competence and accountability to government. Let's do the basics, the fundamentals that we should all be doing, and stop sort of this woke nonsense that we've been on, for the past couple decades now. And it's paying off. In this last election cycle, we won 2 seats. Jeff Gonzalez and Leticia Castillo, our new assembly members from Imperial and from Riverside counties. These are both Latino majority districts. So Latino voters are saying, we like what you guys are doing. We like your, what you're talking about. We want more of it. That's a huge thing for us. And I think we can build on that. So we picked up 2 seats in the Senate. We actually picked up 1 seat in the Senate. So I am very optimistic, and I think with the mismanagement that people have seen, from homelessness to crime to wildfire, I think a lot of people who maybe had been voting Democratic, maybe had been voting for, people like Gavin Newsom, are saying we've had enough. We need a state that is affordable. We need a state that's safe, and we need a state that is doing the fundamental things of government that we rely upon, that are fundamental. Yes. And I think that's what we offer, and it seems to be a message that's really spreading. I believe we can take back California. So let's, again, stay and fight. Let's work together and make it so.
So good. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. It's so important that we hear directly from you guys who are literally in the belly of the beast. So thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Let's do it again.